Welcome to the Abundance Mindset Podcast, where we provide actionable financial education and keep you up to date on important legislative changes.
Today, we're going to break down what was recently signed into action, the Big Beautiful Bill, and its impact on HSAs, what's changed, and why they're still great savings tools. So we're going to talk a lot about HSAs today. I was actually just in a client conversation yesterday and in multiple before, and a lot of people just want to know where they should save their money, and a lot of times, the back of the napkin answer is let's work top down. Let's work most tax advantaged account down, right? So I'm not saying HSA is at the top, but it's near the top when we're thinking about triple tax advantaged accounts to leverage and save in. And so there's all these great features, but ultimately, I think something just fun about us is we are very much into preventative health. We both see, even this summer, we're both seeing two holistic doctors. Ben actually did some interesting testing at Telehealth, and I've been to Vallejo. But it's something, it's a passion, and HSAs are just a great way to pay for services that you ultimately don't have to pay tax on. And I'm even thinking, we have a cold tub in our basement, we have a sauna outside. I bought our red light out of the HSA, so
Yeah. If anybody wants to,
we use ours.
if anybody wants to get smart on VO2 max or lactic acid thresholds, that's the stuff I was recently doing. But that's part of, I think, even the challenge of confusion, right? Is like in people that are invested in their wellness that have an HSA or are thinking about an HSA. It's actually not super clear when you can use it and when you can't. And, we'll talk, today about like recent legislation and how some things changed and some things didn't change. And I think this is important because there were some things that didn't change that looked like they were going to change that ultimately didn't, that actually keep HSAs from being like the fully flexible tool that we'd like. But yeah, for us, we're just the type where we'd rather spend money preventing illness and feeling good, as opposed to spending money on treating illness. And unfortunately, as of today, it's a lot easier to spend your HSA treating illness than preventing it, but not impossible by any means.
Absolutely. And we also like to store away money in our HSA and invest it for the long term.
Yeah. So, okay, whether you're crunchy or not, health savings accounts are a useful tool, and there's a lot of things that change. So we're going to go over those changes today. We're also just going to do a refresher on what a health savings account is and how it can be a really useful part of somebody's financial planning strategy. But before we get into that, let's break down just some definitions that we're going to get into with this podcast. To start with, a health savings account, defining that, it is a personal tax advantage savings account that you can use to pay for qualified medical expenses. Contributions are tax deductible, any growth in the account is tax free, and withdrawals for qualified medical expenses are also tax free. Funds roll over year to year and belong to you, not to an employer or anybody else.
Yep. You have to have a high deductible health insurance to use an HSA, right? So that is the type of insurance plan you need to be on to be able to use an HSA. Versus a low deductible, it's not an option. And also a lot of people too, sometimes they're like, can I do FSA and HSA? Right? It's you're on a high deductible plan, and then you can do the HSA and just that, right?
Yep.
Also, my favorite thing about HSAs is the triple tax advantage. So you put money in, you get a deduction. The money sits in there and grows. Maybe it's invested, it grows tax free. You take it out, it's tax free money. So depending on your tax bracket, right? Every $100 you maybe are spending, you're spending more like 65, 70, 75, right? So triple tax advantage.
Qualified medical expenses, this is the hot definition because something has to be qualified for it to be eligible for HSA use. If it's not a qualified medical expense, then all these tax advantages don't apply when you spend out of your HSA.
Right. Like at the beginning, and I'm talking about all these things that I'm buying out of my HSA, but ultimately you need to make sure that it can be qualified. And there's ways that we went about getting certain expenses qualified, but technically the IRS could go and claw back your tax advantage if they deemed it not qualified.
Yep, 100%. And last thing, catch-up contribution. So You might be familiar with these in 401ks or retirement plans. They also apply with their own unique rule in HSAs where when you are 55 or older, you can add an additional 1,000 annually to your HSA on top of the standard limit.
Yep, absolutely. And this is something where again, it's really, really close to that top, kind of back of the napkin, where should I put my money? No advice is being given here, but it's very tax advantage, and so there are these limits, and it's really good to be aware, especially if you want to max them out.
Yeah.
So, okay, so Big Beautiful Bill came out. What changed? A couple things. The first thing is expanded eligibility. So, when we think about people on the Affordable Care Act plans, whether that's gold or silver or bronze, right? There's different levels of care and coverage, and then cost, right? So you can kind of think gold might be a little bit more coverage, a little more expensive, and then bronze and catastrophic down here are potentially cheaper, less coverage, right? So you kind of get the idea. But now, starting in 2026, individuals on the bronze and the catastrophic plan
Mhm.
can now contribute to HSAs. So that's about 7.3 million people that now can add to an HSA, and arguably probably the ones that really want to add to an HSA because they're having a most likely higher deductible. So really, really great for them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that was surprising because, yeah, if you're talking about somebody on marketplace coverage like a bronze or catastrophic plan, those are the people that probably need a healthcare savings account the most because, that their deductibles are typically going to be a bit higher. I mean, a catastrophic plan can be
Mhm.
quite high. I think previously an HSA was withheld because, they were trying to incentivize people away from buying coverage that is so bare. But I would see this as a reaction to just rising cost of healthcare and realizing that we just have to put tools in people's hands and not try to incentivize them one way or the other.
Yeah, there's nothing to me that says freedom than a retiree, or any individual, but a retiree who has a really big HSA starting
Mm,
in retirement.
yeah, yeah. Along the same lines, or kind of the same spirit, direct primary care compatibility. So, direct primary care. This is when you go to a clinic, oftentimes outside of insurance, and you say, "Hey, I would like," kind of in the name direct primary care, "I would like to pay you for healthcare services." And this is sometimes in supplement, sometimes in lieu of, kind of standard interaction with the healthcare system. So, previously, these actually had to come out of pocket. Actually, for instance, some of the clinics that we've been engaging with recently have DPC contracts, but these could actually be tricky with health savings accounts. They won't be tricky come 2026. You can effectively pay for your primary care subscription via your HSA. This is separate from insurance coverage, right? That's an entirely different conversation, but you can at least use the tax advantages of an HSA on direct primary care service subscriptions starting in 2026.
Right, and isn't there a dollar limit of 150, 300?
Yes, yes, that's right. 150 a month for individuals, 300 a month for families. So yes, there are still some limitations on it. You can't. I'm not sure what bougie DPC would charge you 1,000 a month, but if that's the case, you're going to have to take some of that out of pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If that's your
Um.
case, you can ask us for a great referral. We're really into this stuff.
Yeah, it's true that a couple other things that changed, relatively small things, but previously a high deductible health plan couldn't offer telehealth coverage ahead of the deductible, right? So a lot of times these are 3,000, 4,000, $10,000 deductibles, and they couldn't give you any telehealth coverage before that deductible and still maintain, their status as a high deductible health plan that is HSA eligible. That's changing. To me, that's just common sense. Like it's allowing telehealth, which just makes healthcare delivery a lot more convenient, more accessible, and kind of like unhandcuffs these plans from being able to offer them for people as opposed to, them possibly ending up in urgent care or the emergency room, which aren't bad things, but if you could solve it via telehealth, why not?
Absolutely. Another thing, limits went up. So this is always something to keep an eye on, especially in planning. Did the Roth IRA limit go up? Did the, 401k limit go up? Did the HSA limit go up? For single contributors, it went up $100. For families, it went up $200. So 4,400 for single, and then 8,754 for families. So just keep an eye on those limit increases. Also, there's $1,000 catch up for 55 and older. So this is something, yeah, especially in pre-retirement planning years, you always want to be aware of catch up. So, yep, $1,000 for people over 55. You can
Yeah.
add.
Yep. Okay, so what didn't change? This is actually so some things did change, and that's great. I mean, I think the general trend for HSAs is that they're becoming more open, more accessible, more usable. But there were, if you were following this at all earlier in the summer and in the spring of 2025, there were some pretty big things that were talked about. That some of these things even passed through the House, but they didn't make it into the final bill. So this is the wet blanket part, but there's some things that we actually thought would be really cool that didn't come to fruition. So we'll just mention those things because just because they didn't make it this time doesn't mean they won't make it next time there's an adaptation to health savings accounts. So things that didn't change, Medicare enrollees are still barred from contribution. So if you are enrolled in Medicare, you could not contribute to an HSA previously, and you still cannot contribute to an HSA, which, it wouldn't make sense for every retiree on Medicare, but it's a bummer to have that cap put on you. So really your contribution years are before you enroll in Medicare, and then at least in current law, that's a hard stop.
Could you just describe the difference, what I was talking about with the gold, silver, bronze, you right, and now those plans being able to add to an HSA versus what you're saying?
Yeah, so ACA marketplace coverage, that is typically going to be people who are pre-Medicare, right? So you don't have coverage through your employer, you're maybe self-employed, or for whatever reason, maybe your employer even guided you to the individual marketplace. Those plans now are very wide open to HSAs as long as it's a high deductible health plan. However, when you age into Medicare, that's going to be an entirely different healthcare system. So, you've got Medicare Part A, Part B, C, and D. Um, and even if you're just in Part A only, that's still going to disqualify you from contributing. Although it does not disqualify you from using an HSA. That's an important distinction. If you're in retirement and
Super
you've got an
helpful.
HSA, use it
Super helpful.
within your financial plan.
Yeah. Or potentially let it be invested. It depends. No advice.
Yep. Also, no doubling of contribution limits. I'm not sure how serious this one was. I wasn't following this one specifically through the House and Senate, but there was an ambitious proposal in the House to double the contribution limit. So, I mean, it's interesting to think about it, and we might start to adapt some planning strategies if the contribution limit jumped from 8550 to over 17,000 for a family. That's where a triple tax advantage bucket like that starts to shift in the modeling. So that was really intriguing as it was going through. And for people that could take advantage of it, yeah, I mean, that's a $17,000 deduction, tax-free growth, tax-free use on medical expenses in the future on an account that's generally becoming more permissive with time, but it didn't happen. So,
I would have loved that.
yep. Yep. So nothing there. We'll keep an eye on it. Maybe in a few years it comes back around as these things often do. No spousal catch-up contribution. Oh, this one's so complicated. Basically, there's a headache for spouses over 55. If you're married and you're trying to use that $1,000 catch-up provision that Allison was talking about, effectively you can't have both spouses add to one HSA. It's super ticky-tacky, and for some reason they didn't get rid of this like glitch. So you need to have separate HSAs if you both want to leverage the spousal catch-up. Neither here nor there. Okay, and then the last one, there was conversation about really aggressively expanding the definition of medical necessity, even dropping it to some degree. So there was talk and a hope to make prevention and wellness just kind of open range for HSA spending. I can't maybe comment on the specifics of why it got dropped. I can imagine that allowing the triple tax advantage to go into things that maybe are starting to get pretty out there in terms of their actual contribution to your health. I could see why it might not be a good idea to just like blow the doors open, but for people that are interested in saunas and cold tubs and taking care of their health, it would be nice if it was a bit easier to use the account on that.
Yes. Yes. What's that website we love? TrueMed?
Yeah, TrueMed. So yeah, right now you need to prove a degree of medical necessity in order to use your HSA, which is possible for health and prevention or wellness and prevention products and services. But it just means you have to be mindful and you often have to step through a degree of process to make sure that you're documenting it correctly. Otherwise, you could get that tax advantage clawed back from you if the IRS were to audit you and say that your use of the HSA was not within the realm of medical necessity.
Really good. So obviously we're big fans of health savings accounts, but with these lower contribution caps, they're not necessarily a silver bullet, right? There's other tax strategies and different tools that you're going to employ in a financial plan, like 401k limits or cash balance plans if you're a business owner, or there's so many strategies, right? We're not going to sit here and list them, but ultimately it's all about how do you make all these tools work for you, spin around your goals effectively, and build a plan that's efficient and tax aware and ultimately is again circling your goals. So that's where financial planning, you bring all this together and we start to spin a lot more efficiently. So if this kind of stuff interests you, that's where you should go to our website, book a consult, and start to have that conversation because this is just a piece, right? A piece of the plan. And we love to double click on the education, on different pieces, but ultimately it's about the overall strategy, right? It's about the overall plan, and making that work really efficiently for you. So, yeah, if that's you should have a conversation and ultimately take a look at the website, book a consult. But this is just a piece of the plan.
Yep. Yep. Double click on one piece of the puzzle today. But to round out this conversation, so we talked about what changed, what isn't changing. Let's just reground on why we like them because they've been around for I think almost 25 years now, and they they're a shiny puzzle piece, but they're not the entire puzzle. So yeah, let's just go through even just some of the things that we really like about HSAs that aren't changing, that continue to be evergreen as people continue to use them. And obviously, we work with a lot of people who do use HSAs.
Yeah, things we like. So the first thing that comes to mind, it's portable. You can take it with you job to job. HSAs are owned by the individual. So it's portable, you can take it, and also rolling over funds, right? It's not like other accounts where if you don't use it, you lose it. You get to have rolling contributions, right? So the contribution I made this year, if I don't use it, it rolls to the next and the next and the next. I don't lose it.
Yep, yep. So different than a FSA or flexible spending account, and something that people do get tripped up on. If you have an FSA, there's a very marginal amount that can be rolled over. Otherwise, it has to be used in year. HSA can really be built up over time, so a lot more flexibility in contribution and saving strategy there. Versatility. I mean, we like we said, there are some things that would have made this account even more versatile that didn't happen, but like this account is becoming more versatile with time. And if you have more diversity in being able to use it, and you've got the only account that has a triple tax advantage, this is a really positive signal for the account. So we really like how versatile this is. Everyone's got a body and everybody's got health needs.
Absolutely. And everyone loves saving in taxes, and that's something we love is the tax efficiency. We talked a little bit about that, but even without the new bill additions, the tax advantages remain robust. So that triple tax advantage on the way in as it grows on the way out, especially if you're investing, above what you need sitting in there in cash, it's growing tax free, and withdrawn tax free.
Yeah. And although this account is not like lead player in legacy strategy or retirement by any means, and it hasn't been around for most people to really be meaningful in this way, it is a really like compelling sort of legacy strategy account. So for people that have the capacity to build this account during their working years, and into then to use it during retirement and during their Medicare years, this is, healthcare costs for almost everybody go up significantly in retirement and toward the end of life. And this is just a way to really protect your legacy in a tax efficient manner by building up this account over the years and decades.
Yes, I'll say it again. Nothing says flexibility and nothing says freedom like having a full HSA in retirement. Also, right before or after having a baby, nothing says flexibility and just comfort after having a baby and having just a huge HSA. It really feels good. So I'm on a walk with my one of my peers. So she's a CFP, I'm a CFP, we're talking finance. I just had my first baby. She's having her first baby. We're talking babies and all the crossover between finance and babies. It was a long walk. And anyhow, she had built up her HSA just shy of 100,000, right? Which, okay, we're in our 30s, the contribution limits, you can kind of do the math, right? She's been working. And so, but what's really cool about that situation, not only the piece of having, just shy of 100 grand in an HSA, the piece of that after you have a baby is so it's comforting. But the cool thing is, you don't need necessarily all that sitting in cash, right? So she's able to have multiple years in cash in the HSA, but then she has the ability to have the investments working for her, right? So hopefully they can, keep those contributions up, of course, but now it's growing tax free with the investments, and that account is working for her,
Mm.
and growing with the investments underlying. And tax free, and so it's a fun pool to manage and just have when you start to build a family. And then also if you're saving it long term as well. So it's one of those tools that I think can provide some emotional peace, and also just it's a fun one to fit into planning.
So the bottom line with HSAs, there's still the most tax efficient account that you can own. The One Big Beautiful Bill gives them a little bit more reach in 2026, letting more people qualify, expanding a little bit what they can be used for. But the core benefits haven't changed. You can't yet use them on all your favorite preventive, crunchy wellness purchases without some proof of medical necessity. However, with the triple tax advantage, portability, year to year rollover, HSAs are an incredibly useful piece of a comprehensive financial plan. And like we said, the most tax efficient vehicle that you can own. So, like we said in this podcast, if this is something that's interesting to you, maybe you're using an HSA now, but don't feel like it's optimized, or you're not sure how it should work with the other pieces in your financial plan, this is precisely the type of stuff that we help people with. You can take a look at our website, book a consultation, and we can get into the actual details of your picture.